Let's see what the Museum of Dubious Splendors is going to be about. Let's end on a well, not end just yet, because of course there's going to be Frog Detective, and as far as I know, Frog Detective is something pretty cheerful. I doubt. I know it's called the Frog Detective, and what's the Haunted Island? Okay, Haunted Island is sort of suggesting that it might be slightly terrifying, or there might be a murder. All right, so out of this, into the Museum of Dubious Splendors. So let's see what that is about. Again, if I'm not mistaken, it's by the same developers. I think I found it. Or maybe it's from one of the developers I remember. I have another game from them, maybe? Could be. Okay, I can play with a gamepad as well. I think I will do just that. The frog is quite silly. You're right. Right, so seems like a little bit of an Indian theme. The following work is an adaptation of a collection of stories written by the Gujarati poet Mir Umar Hassan. These stories, entitled In Dubious Splendor, were written in 1962 for Malwa Chronicle, but they were mangled and edited without the author's permission prior to their publication in serialized form. The collection became momentarily infamous as the subject of the first court case to arbitrate authorial ownership in independent India. Even today, despite countless restorative efforts by scholars, it cannot be said with any certainty that the text that we used for this adaptation was the original as written by Umar Hassan. It's a paper boat. Folks, there's the reason why I don't play spooky games, because even that just spooked me. Darn, I want it to be. Actually, there are some photographs. I want it to be sneaky and go behind the door. So let's. I can't stay. I don't think there's anything of interest around here, right? There's just rain and paper boats. Let's go inside the museum. Peter Gregory Cunter was a prolific traveler, the founder of the doctrine of the anthropologist, and a treasurer at the Royal Academy. Cantor was known to all civilized world as an authority on the peoples and customs of Hindustan. But even the all-knowing Cantor was bewildered by the apparatus, an object that he wrote parsimoniously about in his annals and later alluded to with deep regret in the journal that he maintained upon his return to England. The apparatus, as Cantor first described it in his book of travels, had no apparent purpose. It was a tubular object of indeterminate shape found in the living sapses of the people of Danta. Often small enough to be placed in an almirah, the apparatus seemed so commonplace to people using it that Cantor could not ask what it was without crippling damage to his credibility as a member of the superior race, as he believed him to be. Oh boy. That it was man-made and not creation of nature was but evident, and Cantor made specific mention of its artifice. But beyond that record, nothing else was written about its shape or material, its color or form, or its intended purpose or providence. Cantor was so startled by its presence that he did not even name it, and only called it the apparatus whenever he made a scant mention of its presence in the annals. It seems like that his fascination with the object had not gone unnoticed, and in an act of spontaneous diplomacy, the Raja of Sheturvan, the province that Cantor was touring, presented him with one of the mysterious objects. But the gift only served to torment Cantor, who found the apparatus a constant reminder of his bewilderment and his failure as a man of knowledge, for he had never worked up the courage to ask what it was. Cantor kept the apparatus at his house in Wellington, and made provisions in his will to have it displayed at this museum after his passing, hoping someone might shed light upon its mysteries. Mysteries. I sometimes do the same thing as Ira does. I notice the mistakes. And to this day, a replica of the apparatus can be found on display, waiting for someone to identify what Cantor never could. And this is one weird museum. Also, someone better install the ceiling. So, So what do we have here? First of all, we have no door. That's what we have. We have no door and interest. All right, we have... no, I don't want to... No, I don't want to leave. Don't want to leave. I generally don't want to leave. So there is a little bit of a tartan colored hand. Is that tartan? Can this be considered tartan? There's also a huge statue to a tube of Colgate, the toothpaste. Okay. And another tartan hand to make the total number of tartan hands 3. Well, let's go to the right. In the land between the Karatush Plateau and the mountains of Hindu Kush, there lived a pasha called Vakut. Surrounded by desert on 3 of its sides and by unforgiving cliffs on the other, the kingdom of Wakri, of which Vakut Pasha was the ruler, was an inhospitable place. And yet in this harsh land, the capital of Wakri was a magnificent town, full of gilded minarets and soft shade-laden streets. Such wealth in the desert unroot the raiding trails proved an irresistible temptation for many warlord, but Pasha Vakut managed to keep the invaders at bay. Pasha? I'm sort of pronouncing it in the middle of the 2 stresses, somehow. This difficult task was in no small part made possible by the Guild of Desert Scouts that the Pasha had trained and commissioned. Under the tutelage of his chief military officer and thin, nervous general called Sinia Humru, several runners were hired and trained to run across the desert sands and chart the shifting landscape every day. With their feet clad in coarse cotton and salves applied to their forehead, these runners would maintain a constant and current repository of ever-changing desert. They would record the positions of the waterholes and the dunes of treacherous sand. They would note where the top layers of mud had dried too soon, leaving quagmire below, and where camels could cross. And so with their endless running, they preserved for the Pasha and his army countless routes of attack and retreat that were used to repel and harry invaders, and also to launch many a successful plunder of the neighborhood kingdoms. While the guides were well used to the desert air and heat, they never could protect their feet, for the hot sand and salt soon eroded everything. The younger scouts could bear their blisters very well, but as they got older, they took to carpentry or tanning, leaving their post with a royal pension. Every one of them retired after a few years, every one except Ibu, the legendary runner, who had been guiding the Pasha and his army for centuries, without a blister on his feet. While traversing the deserts, Ibu's feet, through some miracle, had turned stiff and hide-like, so as to bear the rough sands and the eroding salt, and he continued to sprint across the burning landscape with the abandon of a youth. When Ibu died, in his 673rd year of service, Pasha decreed that Ibu's feet be preserved in honor of his exceptional service and capability. It is a replica of these feet that are displayed here at the museum. Well, let me just say, these are not necessarily feet. Oh, it's not literal feet. It did say they grew hide-like qualities. Although these are a tad too modern. Just a tad too modern. Oh, hey. I would also assume I might need to follow, really remember what doors I'm entering. Because right now I'm just basically using the door to my right. A long time ago, when the mountains could still remember their names, and the monkey gods ruled the sky, a grand feast was held atop the Gurbuta Purbat. Here, in celebration of their victory over demons, the monkey gods feasted on apples harvested from the clouds, for that was the sole fruit permitted to them. But when every god had eaten, they saw to their utter consternation, there was still one apple left. Being gods and not demons, these reasonable divine monkeys came to the conclusion that the apple ought to be divided equally, so that every god might have an equal share. Glad to have arrived at this solution, the monkey gods smirked to themselves and slapped each other backs. But when the mischief maker asked, "And what shall we cut it with?" the gods' faces fell, and they resumed their morose pondering until someone declared, "Summon Ibu the blacksmith." Ibu was a giant, and it took him less than the blink of an eye to walk across the 3 realms to the gods. He listened dutifully to the chief amongst the monkey gods, And then he nodded sagely at the request for a tool to divide the apple with, then bowing his hand low, rushed back to his workshop. In 10 days, Ibu returned to the monkey gods, beaming with pride at his new creation, a magnificent ray of light that stretched from infinity to infinity. The gods looked at it with some uneasiness. One of them tried to lift it and failed, another tried in vain. And when all the gods failed to budge this piercing beam, they turned to Ibu and pleaded with him to make a smaller tool so that I might use it with some ease. And so Ibu made his way back to his workshop, and after 10 years returned again with his gleaming new invention, a shard of lightning. The gods tried their best to have this dazzling creation, but failed yet again, for the lightning singed their codes, leaving black unsightly streaks along some of their hands and faces. Ibu returned to his workshop yet again, and after another interminable decade of work, he approached the gods with his newest innovation, a splendid ivory tusk, curved and on to perfection. Again, all the gods tried to lift it, but found that they could not do so without also having to lift the elephant that had somehow attached itself to the other end. Much disheartened, Ibu took his rarest materials and tools and set out to craft the perfect yantra. For 100 years and 100 moons, he worked on making it small enough for the gods to handle, but in his haste, it slipped from his hands and through his floorboards. Ibu bit his tongue and watched with horror as he saw it fall to earth. Ibu returned to the monkey gods to apologize profusely, but he saw that the gods had already left the feast, leaving their undivided apple for Ibu as payment. But it is Ibu's lost yantra that is shown at this museum in a magnificent sculptural form commissioned by Maharaj Dar Singh. It's a knife. Interesting how they give it a little bit of a modern twist. Because obviously I'm pretty sure this was not intended this way. Also, floating apples, folks. Floating apples. I'm not sure how long the story is. As far as I remember, this is a pretty short game. Again, this is more of an interactive experience than anything. When Daroji died and his funeral was completed, all that was left was for his lawyer Metha to distribute the property, as bequeathed in the will. The house was divided between the 3 sons and their families, and the rest of the property similarly dispatched to other relatives. Every tiny object, from the cutlery embroidered kurta and even the table fan with the bent blades, were given to some member of the family, distant and close, with a carefully drafted note of personal import that Daroji had written prior to his passing. Such a meticulous distribution of his earthly acquisition did not surprise Mehta, who in Daroji had found both a conscientious colleague and a lifelong friend. So it came as some surprise to everyone when he found an apparatus in Daroji possession of which no mention at all was made in the will. Try as he might, Mehta could not discern any use for the object. No one in the family had seen or ever heard of this quaint apparatus, and its purpose could not be fathomed nor its materials identified. Its place of discovery was also surprising, for it was found on Daroji's deathbed, resting below his head in the moments prior to his death, as if it were a possession of great value. Bewildered by this unexplained object, Mehta was only too glad to donate it to the museum, where it now resides. Is there any reason why I'm looking at the ground or at the floor? So what is this? Are you telling me the apparatus is a pillow? No, that's too silly of an explanation. Sorry, but that's too silly of an explanation. I think it also said it was lying underneath the pillow, right? Or was he lying on it? Because if the apparatus is just a mere pillow, I would like to demand my money back. Okay. Fine game. Tell me more, perhaps? They're all different and not connected stories, it seems. When Ishtar Shuhai rode into Constantinople on the back of a donkey tied to a cart full of specimens, the crowd scarcely noticed his passage. There was a rebellion in the air, and cries of the bread vendors mixed with blood-curdling shouts of anarchy. But neither the protests nor the Europeans in their buggies, or the tradesmen, or the town criers, or the carpet sellers and coppersmiths and knife grinders who thronged the streets all hours of the day could dissuade Ishtar Shuhai from his task, for he had traveled an immense distance to witness in person the wonder of Punka. as the newly discovered variety of plant has been named by locals. Again, comma perhaps. Istar Shuhai was the senior-most botanist at the University of Qadhirj in Damascus, a title he had acquired at an impossibly young age for his penchant for discovering plant species no one else had ever known or written about. And here at Constantinople, having heard rumors of a tall plant with a bulbous head that grew in shaded places and often inside people's houses, Istar Shuhai could not resist a trip to the magnificent city. He spent the entire summer battling flies that infested the dusty air and collecting samples and specimens to be grown later at the university gardens. He would force his way into people's houses with a few polite phrases, branching a farman that he himself had written as if it were a regal writ, and then proceeded to take careful notes on the appearance and behavior of the punka plant. Of his notes, few have survived, but we know that he took particular interest in the peculiar nature of the foliage and noticed that the main stem was slender and appeared to never branch. He also found varieties where the stem was nearly absent, with only the broad bulbous foliage adorning the plant. What is this? Any guesses, folks? What this might be? Because we've previously sort of seen what, maybe not what is not, it is for real, but what is going to be in the museum. In the 6th week of his enterprise, Istar Shuhai met Benjamin Wheeler, a British military surgeon who professed himself much interested in Istar's work and his discovery of punha plants. For the next 2 weeks, Wheeler accompanied Istar on his expedition, toiling alongside the botanist to collect specimens. But a few days prior to Wheeler's return to England, Istar Shuhai was killed. He had tumbled down a well while searching for a sapling and had drowned. A sudden, unexpected death that was swallowed and forgotten in a tumult of the times. Wheeler, who was familiar with Istar's work by now, took under his charge the specimens of the punka plant and even appropriated the botanist's notes. For he reasoned, what better way to honor his colleague than to continue his research? Wheeler's return to England was celebrated, and the plant quickly became a staple of urban life. Grown and harvested with increasing frequency, it became an ubiquitous fixture in many homes and the source of Wheeler's prosperity. But long after Wheeler's return from Constantinople, people continued to wonder if Istar Shuhai's demise had truly been a natural one. Wow. So what is this? Something that is grown at home. Something that's grown at home, something that sometimes doesn't even have a stem, just like a bulbous flower growth, whatever. I initially thought maybe this could be... Well, it's not potatoes. I think the potatoes came from the New World, right? I think they came from the Americas. What do you grow at home? Obviously you can grow some spices. You can grow tomatoes, I suppose, at home. Also, I cannot remember where tomatoes came from either. Wait, what? Is this an interpretation of the museum or punka plants? Oh, could it have been that those are actually like not ferns, but some big basically something with a really big leaf that you can indeed grow. Like monsteras are big plants that you can just grow at home again. Maybe that's that. It's a little bit ridiculous. I was expecting a plant. But yeah, it's sad. Like some of them are with a stem, others just growing as is. Maybe they meant that. Maybe they meant that. Ooh, and there's more of them. Is there another door here as well? Oh, there is. Oh, darn, I still don't know which door I need to go to. In the kingdom of Lockton, in a time well beyond the recollections of even the oldest of camels, there ruled a great pasha of the Pukundungri clan. He was an old and benevolent ruler, stately in his manner, sedate in his composure, and portly in his aspect. Contentment at the prosperity of this vast preserve radiated from his jovial mind, and he was greatly beloved by his people, for never in all living memory had he demonstrated ill humor towards his denizens or underlings. But one winter morning, the palace awoke to find Pasha in a terrible rage. He was found pacing in the hallway, his arms in vivid gesticulations dissecting the air around his person, with his features grotesquely animated with anger. Alarmed at this change in the beloved ruler, his viziers anxiously asked what troubled him so. Could it be the knowledge of the rodents who secretly stole 2 of his horses last night that angered him? 2 rodents who secretly stole 2 of his horses. Figurative rodents, I'm assuming. Or was he perhaps enraged by the crowd that had arrived yesterday and was found wandering the halls of the palace without a turban? The Pasha made no reply to these entreaties, for his rage had left him speechless. He stormed around his palace, his wazirs and his khansamas, and had jagirs and cooks and maids and servants forming a retinue as he trumped to his chambers. Here he pointed a trembling finger at the hundreds of small, pointed, glistening worms that seemed to have grown overnight in everything from floorboards to furniture, and he indicated with violent motions of his arms his desire to be rid of these creatures. The royal physicians had by this time brewed his opium tea, and with many remonstrations had managed to calm the Pasha, who with his composure restored, ordered his attendants to set about ridding the place of his newfound pestilence. The servants approached the worm nervously and picked at it, pulled at it, kicked it and hit it, but managed to budge it not a bit. The wazirs poured boiling oil on these strange creatures, but not one wriggled or died. The generals were called from their barracks, and they brought with them spears and shields, scimitars and daggers. They hacked and slashed at the worms, poked and pierced, but no effect. And having failed at their exertions, they returned to Pasha with trepidation. The Pasha commiserated with the failure of his wazirs and generals, and having heard their tale, he removed his thigh bone and handed it to the youngest captain of the guard. As you do, beseeching him to beat at the worms with the bone. The captain received the bone with great reverence, knowing that this yantra was only ever extracted in times of great strife. He then carried the bone to the site of the infestation, and with a silent prayer and a well-aimed blow, smacked one of the worms on the head, and sent it scuttling back into the wood whence it had come from. Overjoyed at this miracle cure, he beat 24 of them within the minute, and soon the entire palace was rid of pestilence. Eater Colby, thanks very much for the follow. The thigh bone was returned to its rightful place, inside the Pasha's leg, and a magnificent sculpture of this implement was commissioned so that people might worship this miraculous object that had saved them from the scourge of the needle-like pestilence. It is this bone in sculptural form that is displayed here at the museum. It's a hammer. Definitely it has a million of different nails has not appeared, but this I can understand how this can be sort of said to be a bone. ABS tools. I still don't know what to think about this game, but it's quite peculiar, Little had been written of the legendary cobbler Maharaj Thila Thalkat. It is of course known to all connoisseurs of the Thal history that Thalkat was the first of the 3 cobbler kings who ruled the kingdom of Gautrupada. What little we know with certainty about this reclusive king and his short but prosperous reign is to be found in Journal of Ibn Hamid, an Egyptian traveler who found welcome at the kingly court for several years. Of all the chapters that Hamid wrote about the reign of Thalkat, none is so remarkable as the story of the strange container and how the cobbler king created it. It is sad, Ibn Hamid records, that long before Thalkat was the ruler of Gautrupada, he lived inside the belly of a giant camel and traveled the desert searching for waterholes. One day, when Thalkat was riding in his camel, his mount was attacked by desert wolves. These demonic creatures tore the throat of his camel, and Thalkat only survived because he had the presence of mind to turn himself into a tick and hide within the folds of fur of one of the wolves. Here he stayed ensconced until the creatures had eaten their fill of the camel and retired to sleep, snoring with contentment. With the danger now abated, Thalkat changed back into his usual cobbler self and retrieved as much as he could of the camel's hide from the remains that the wolves had not yet eaten. He then proceeded to sew the hide together to craft a container where he could store a record of his remarkable adventure, a record which he had written on sheets of paper thinner than air, while he was hidden in the guise of a tick. And a record, moreover, of immense value, without which Thalkat knew it would be impossible for others to believe that what had befallen his camel. He worked feverishly, afraid that wolves might wake up at any moment and eat him, and as the sun rose in the east, he finished his grisly task and left the site of his camel massacre with his container by his side, and after days of hard travel reached the safety of the city of Isfahan. This container has accompanied the venerable personage on the first of his great adventures. This container that accompanied the venerable personage on this first of his great adventures is shown here at the museum. There's definitely a problem for me to put the emphasis in the right places. Emphasis. Okay, I was actually expecting this to be a book, but I suppose a little leather briefcase is to be expected. Also, an elephant wallpaper. Looks pretty lovely. Oh geez, which door do I use at this point? Thanks, Rimties. I'll try to sit up straight. It's now harder to see now that the camera is looking like that. But I'll do my best in sitting straight. Okay, so these are indeed different doors. I'm not sure which one to go for anymore. I think the right one still. I think I sort of stuck with the right door. Oh dear. All right. Goonch. The movement, I think the movement is floaty. Well, the movement of the camera is floaty, maybe due to the fact that I think I have a problem with my right joystick. The one that usually is used for looking around in games. I think it's slightly drifting. And I've noticed it sometimes when Steam actually turns on some sort of like a compatibility mode and provides you with the gamepad controls in the game that doesn't require the gamepad controls, I've noticed that my cursor just slowly drifts to the bottom right corner. This is seemingly identical to the slow sort of drip down of the camera as I'm playing this. It's not that big of a deal. Thankfully, it's for the most part, the camera is not moving. It seems like the little change, like the little I don't know, impulse, I suppose, of it is not enough to move the camera in most of the games. Or at least the one I actually play. My previous gamepad, though, at least one of them, I had to abandon because the right joystick has gone so badly mangled somewhere. That also started drifting, but drifting heavily, and so you couldn't play it normally. Like it was constantly, your camera was constantly drifting away. My playthrough of Darksiders was abandoned specifically due to the gamepad just no longer properly working. All right. Oh geez, I did not expect that there's going to be so much reading. I might call it after a while. Specifically on this game, because there's still the Frog Detective. Gunj Bonj Haranath was a simple soul, a queer merchant by trade and devout worshipper of Kaju Bakwan. He spent his days rattling around in a bullock cart visiting the far-flung principalities where coconut husk was peeled. His father had obtained a farman, a royal decree, giving their family sole rights of purchase of all core producted in region. And Bojhanath cherished this document as much as he did the Kaju idol that resided in the corner of his room. So when the farman, along with all his wealth, was burned in the great conflagration that engulfed his town, Bojhanath, now destitute, turned to the Kaju idol and prayed for deliverance with fervor. Next morning, having spent the night in prayer, Bojhanath was startled to discover strange apparatus growing in his head. It was little to the side of his nose, and he could not quite see it, so he did not know what it was or what it looked like. He did not even know what it did or where it came from. But so excited he was to have his prayers answered that he rushed to the court of Sultan and demanded an immediate audience, hoping to be rewarded for growing such a strange apparatus on his head. Glasses? What comes in the face? Hat? It's on his face though. Here, begging the Sultan's indulgence, he proceeded to narrate his misfortunes and his night of prayer before unraveling the turban that covered his face up to the neck. Interesting. It's going to be like a scarf? No, it couldn't be a beard. I think that's an object. As the Sultan looked at the strange growth upon the head, and in his avarice, he commanded that it be chopped off and brought to him instead. A scimitar appeared with alacrity in the hands of the guard who has escorted Bojhanath, and before he could protest, the blade sliced in the air and chopped the apparatus off. Bojhanath collapsed in pain and was bundled out of the court, and the Sultan received the stolen apparatus with great interest, and promptly stuck it to his own head. Delighted by his new vestment, the Sultan now commissioned that one be made for each of his children, and soon all the royals at court and many a wealthy person in the kingdom were wearing one. The apparatus became synonymous with Sultan's reign, and great temples were constructed in its celebration, and consecrated within were large replicas of the original artifact, which still adorned the Sultan's head. It is one such replica of the original apparatus that is now kept here in this museum for all to see and admire. I think they mentioned a turban, so it's not going to be a turban, right? An ear. Maybe I should not try to make sense of it all. Maybe there isn't that much sense of it to it all. But I'm struggling to guess some of these as it stands. Alright. Camera again slowly drifts down. I see if I can actually switch to keyboard and mouse and see if that sort of stops it from drifting all the time. Righty, so. Let this be the last one, and then I'm gonna go and just try to find an end to this, perhaps. Finale of some sort. Oh, right, and I also need to do some things slightly later on. A long time ago, long before the wind was stretched across the hole in the sky, all gods and all demons lived in great harmony. Despite their differences, there was no conflict between them, and they met and celebrated every night, emptying countless pots of toddy from the 9 worlds and chewing the choicest of bong. The choice of words here. Choicest of something. Maybe that's how it goes. Maybe that's a perfectly cromulent way of speaking. It just feels like it's something modern, like something choicest. Maybe I don't know. It's also an ancient text, although it's translated in English, so you never know. When the revelry was over, they would count the stars in solemn ritual and derive deep satisfaction from the fact that they invariably agreed upon the total number of stars that were there in the sky. This contentment in the shared perusal of the night sky was the foundation of their peace and friendship. But Ajmo, god of fingernails, a demigod and mischief maker who dearly loved the battle and the tumult of war, could not be content with such insipid peace. It irked him to see these celebrations, he yearned for rousing skirmish. Ajmo's crafty mind soon concocted a devious plan. Begging leave to be excused from the nightly revels, he decamped to the remote realm of Barud, where he spent years crafting a magnificent yantra, a device that, with a brilliant explosion, could send a star shooting into the sky to join its infinite brethren. With this device in one hand, he took aim at the edge of the horizon and with the press of a lever, let loose a shining ball of his own, such that it lodged at the very tip of the evenfall. That night, when the Celestials gathered in the revelry and proceeded in their ritualistic count, the demons counted countless stars in the sky, but the gods counted countless stars, and then one. Because the star that Ajmo launched into the sky was so cunningly crafted that it could be only seen by the keen eyes of the gods, and the demons, who were characteristically nearsighted, could not see the normal star that had been so recently been added to the firmament. The difference in counts sowed a seed of such deep distrust and discord that the next morning saw the gods and demons bashing each other on the battlefield. Great engines of war were built, moats dug and castles erected, spears sharpened and scimitars dipped in ceremonial blood of beetles, as the armies clashed and roiled for centuries untold. The yantra that Ajmo had built now lay forgotten in his workshop amidst the excitement of war. And it was from here that the yantra was stolen by the mortals, who proceeded in a great capacity for violence. It has since been the lasting emblem of war and strife through all known history. And it is this sign of conflict that is displayed here at the museum. I'm assuming it's a cannon. A gun. Reasonable. I can actually bring... do I need to use the gamepad for this? I just quickly jump out and see if I am required to use the gamepad. Or maybe I clicked something at the very beginning of the game and now it says, yep, you need to use the gamepad, and there's no other way about this. Also people complaining about bat controls, which is interesting. But yeah, right now it does not seem like I can move around. I cannot control the camera anymore. Well, that is interesting. Alright, I'll have to go with the gamepad still. Also, keys, interesting. I wonder what the meaning of keys is here. Keys and a gun. Once again, let's take that right door and see what's what. Oh, hey. Either that was a truck hitting one of the potholes or one of them lying policemen, as it's called over here. Speed bumps. He's the English word for that. Or that was thunder. And hey, it seems like it seems like I've completed the game. Just as I was about to give up, just as I would say, all right, I mean, it's nice, it's fun, but my voice will tire out as I'm reading this. It's a nice little thing. Again, made by 2 people. Again, the game just quits to the desktop the moment it desires to do so.